The deadline for filing tax returns was this past weekend. Marika Muller is from the South African Revenue Service, or SARS, and she's here with us now to talk about how the filing season has gone and a couple of the issues that perhaps arise from it. Morning, Marika. Morning. You look like a human being. You don't look like a monster. You don't look horrible. In fact, you look quite friendly. From SARS.
Thank you.
How's it gone?
It went really well. We actually exceeded the estimates we had for ourselves at the end of close of business on Friday. We're looking at over 4.26 million people who submitted their returns between the 1st of July and the 21st of November. Those are really good numbers. They are probably slightly below where they were last year, but interestingly enough, it's not a bad thing. Last year we had a lot of people submitting who actually were not required to submit, who weren't earning at the threshold of submissions.
Which is, again,
you're
65,000?
No, 250,000 per annum from one employer with no additional deductions, no additional allowances, means you actually do not have to submit a tax return. It doesn't mean you're not paying tax, but you don't have to submit. Last year, a lot of people who didn't need to submit did so. This year, we've seen the real sort of, our education campaign has paid off to some degree. A lot less people have filed who didn't need to file. So in fact, overall, the numbers of people who had to file have gone up.
Let's get to the people that didn't file. What are those numbers looking like, and what are the type of penalties that they're facing?
In terms of people we expected to file who didn't, the numbers aren't too bad. We're looking in the 200,000 or 300,000, which sounds dramatic, but actually isn't that bad. Couple of messages to them. First of all, if you woke up on Saturday morning and you realized you hadn't filed, please don't leave it to July next year, which people do. You can go into a SARS branch at any point. You can go in right now. You can log into e-filing right now. Do it now, because penalties start to build up. It depends on how much you earn. It can range from 250 Rand a month that you're late, all the way up to 16,000 Rand a month if you're in a multi-millionaire category. So the initial message is please file as soon as possible. The quicker you do it, the smaller that penalty is going to be.
How understanding are you on giving a bit of grace, saying, okay, first time you've done this, we'll let you off. Second time, we'll fine you. Do you have a sort of graded penalty system, or is it hit them?
Penalties are applicable no matter if it's your first year earning a salary or you're approaching retirement. The thing is, how we grade the penalties is it's dependent on your income. So if you're just starting out, you're a low income earner, we're not going to bankrupt you. That's not what we're there for. I think, as you said at the beginning, we're not actually the big bad ogre taxman. It's far more about a relationship between citizens and government, and we take it very seriously. So we're not going to slam down on you if you're a day or two late. But what we're saying is please go now. Don't leave it.
Marika, what about the IT 88? Because you were talking about you don't want to clamp down on people just for the sake of being so it's a relationship, but a lot of the times you'll find people who are maybe retiring or not getting their what is it when not retired, but when you
well, depends what you want to say.
No, not retire, when you leave
help
work,
me with what you want to say,
when
and
you
I'll help
leave
you
work,
with
when you resign or you retire, whatever the case is, there's sometimes an IT 88, and is that linked to whether or not you have not submitted your tax returns?
What's
and sometimes
the IT 88?
Sometimes people are surprised that that's even there. Maybe perhaps we'll start off with that.
Look, it's difficult to talk to specifics, because even something as theoretically general as the IT 88, it's very much on an individual basis. So your outcomes, if you were to resign now, would probably be different from David's and would be different from mine if I were 2 days in a CNBC Africa job. The message is, if you have any worries, if you're worried about the advice you're getting, or if you're worried about how your employer's HR and finance department is taxing you, or how they're categorizing your salary, how it's being structured, instead of waiting for something nasty to hit you the day you resign, I mean, most of us, I think, do plan ahead of a resignation unless it's a really unfortunate incident. Talk to a tax advisor if you have one, or call the SARS contact centre. They're very good. It isn't a holding channel for queries. We've got some very good tax experts there. Call them, explain the issue, and they'll take you through it.
I think what's happened too is that, and I think it was under Pravin Gordhan that this started, the much tougher on collection, but also much better on service. So one gets the refund very quickly, one get the response very quickly, tax compliance certificate very quickly. One thing I've been meaning to ask is, are the people working there rewarded for the amount of tax that they get in where there's a matter of interpretation? So in other words, not that people under 250,000, where someone has expenses that they claim, they've got different sources of income, and then there may be a ruling that's needed. Is the SARS person incentivized to rule against the taxpayer if it's 50-50, so that they get a bonus?
Absolutely not. We don't work, I suppose you would call it, on commission.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Well, that's reassuring.
Doesn't work like that. You work on the basis of the rules. There are very strict guidelines set out for our own staff as well as for taxpayers.
What happens if you submit your tax return and you think, oh, I've made a mistake? A month later.
Not a problem. It's not a crisis. What you do is if you're an e-filer, you go online and you submit an adjustment request. There's actually a function in e-filing where you can say, either if you've realised, oh dear, I claim for medical aid expenses which I wasn't perhaps not entitled to, or you realise that you were entitled to make some claims and you didn't know, and you're thinking, all right, maybe I should have because I might perhaps get a refund. You've got the option in e-filing to request a recalculation. You can submit your additional supporting documents. Equally, if you're not comfortable doing it yourself, and I know a lot of people aren't, I'm not all the time confident in handling my tax affairs directly. Again, come into a branch. The consultants will help you. They're very good. They don't work on commission. So it's not in their interest to say, no, you're not allowed, or yes, you are allowed. Bring whatever the information is. Make sure I've got to add this, make sure you've got proper supporting documents. We've got a lot of people who try and claim medical aid, travel expenses on what might be called flimsy supporting documents, and that's not a good idea.
Flimsy is a nice euphemistic way of putting it. What I have learned is that the most important book in your whole house is your car logbook. It's not in your house, it's in your car. It's the most important thing, because if you can't produce that, you can't claim
if you're entitled to a travel allowance, you've got to keep very specific details of your trips. And we do actually, not only do we detail it on the SARS website, but at one point there was actually a logbook you could download, so you knew exactly what information you need to put in. Unfortunately, people don't always stick to those rules. We've had some very strange submissions I've seen, sort of handwritten notes saying things like, left for Brakpan, got back at 2. While that might make sense to you, it is not considered a supporting document for a vehicle allowance claim.
Private will work, that's the key thing
and
for the
starting kilometres and ending kilometres, not just the number of Ks you travelled, but what was it before you left and what was it when you got back.
I dream about these things. That was Marika Muller, who is Deputy Spokesperson for the South African Revenue Service.